Hello and welcome to my channel. I had the Dewback Rider expansion pack for Star Wars Legion. For those of you old enough to remember, this was a static prop seen in the very first Star Wars film. It wasn't until years later, when George Lucas tinkered with them, that they actually started to move. This creature has always been a favourite of mine, so I'm glad to show this model. So let's check out what's in the box. As usual from Fantasy Flight Games, everything's highly organised and individually packed. First up we have the assembly instructions, and these are fairly straightforward. We even have multiple rider options. Naturally it comes with all the cards and tokens so you can play this character. And these are all the parts laid out. We're spoiled for choice with the weapon options. Anyway, onto the assembly, and for this I use Tamiya cement, and this will weld the parts together. There's a rolled up blanket to add to the back, and at the front is the pommel. The head comes in two parts, but I can't glue it together just yet. I'm going to paint this first while I still have access to the inside of the... I also built up the two stormtroopers, or sandtroopers in this case. The lower half of the body is sculpted onto the dewback, so I quickly test fitted them both. I won't be gluing these down, so I can swap and change them as and when I choose. One has a heavy repeating blaster, and the other one's got a big stick. The base itself is flat and boring, so I mixed together some milliput and I spread it across the base, making it nice and lumpy, because sand dunes are never flat. To create the texture, I dug out some coarse sandpaper and pushed it in, and this does a great job of replicating the grain. When the time comes, I will be covering the base with some fine sand, so most of this will be getting covered anyway. The final step is to place the dewback. By pushing it down, it will create impressions of the feet. This is for two reasons. The first is so we can find the right place later, and the second is so that it sinks into the sand a little bit. Right, onto the painting. First we prime everything, and then I base coat the dewback in a dark green. Then I dry brush a light green all over it all. Then I mix some white into the green and give it another pass. I also added some browns in selected areas. Next I added a little bit of black into the eyes. Since the head hadn't been glued together yet, I could open it up and paint the mouth. And that's followed by the painting of the teeth. And it's so much easier painting this way rather than when it's all together. The last thing to paint is the bridle, and this has both leather and metal parts. And now the head can be assembled one last time. It's quite a tight fitting shoving it into the neck piece, so much so I didn't need any glue. He's looking the part though. Now moving on to the body, there are plenty of leather straps to paint. And as for the saddlebags and the blanket, they're all painted slightly different colours, otherwise it makes it harder to differentiate between one item and another. And then I need to paint the stormtroopers' legs. These are in pure white, then the gap between the armour and the soles of the feet are in black. You no doubt have to retouch up the white, as the blacks are in these hard to reach places. Pretty much the same process is repeated for the top half of the bodies. It's almost impossible to make it look perfect at this scale, so it's just a matter of getting it somewhere near. I do use a little bit of black panel liner to help seep into the crevices, as this does the work where the brush can't reach. I painted one shoulder pauldron in a rusty orange while the other one is painted white. These signify different ranks, and they're only worn by the sandtroopers and not the regular stormtroopers. The base is finally cured, so I'll prime it and paint the base colour yellow, and then the trim is painted in black. There's no substitute for real sand, so as my adhesive I'm going to use PVA glue. Using a cotton bud, I spread it about for even coverage. Then it's just a matter of sprinkling on some model sand, and this stuff is much finer than regular sand, which ensures that it will scale well. Before it has a chance to set, I place the dewback into its footsteps and push down. To help secure the sand, I spray on some fixer, making sure I also cover the feet. That way I can sprinkle on some extra sand to make it look like the toes have sunk in a little bit. And all I need to do now is spray on some matte sealer and it's done. I've not glued down the stormtroopers' torsos so I can still swap and change them, as visually my preference is holding the rod, but for combat the heavy repeating blaster is more appropriate. And speaking of which, I'm going to swap out the torso now so you can check that out. I would just like to point out that like with other models and kits from this range, there's absolutely no cleanup required, which is a nice little bonus. I've built up a handful of these models now, so if you want to check out those videos, check out the links at the end of this one. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, if I can do it, so can you.